Welcome, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I see people popping in as we speak. Welcome, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. We're really lucky to have Conrad from Build Up Bookings back. This is his second time doing a podcast with us. So welcome, Conrad. The last one we did on email marketing, which was fantastic, very well received. I'll actually share a link to that in the chat box as we get going. So hello, everyone. My name is Brad. I'm head of marketing at Hostfully. I'm really excited today to talk about something near and dear to my heart, and that's paid ads. And paid ads, essentially, as you probably know, are paid acquisition channels. So you pay to play, essentially. So Facebook ads, Google ads, etc. And this is contrary to earned marketing channels like your email list, like what we talked about at the last webinar. Organic traffic from your blog, your organic social media posts, all that kind of stuff. So this is really super important, and even like it may seem counterintuitive now with for the most part bookings are improving quite substantially, and a lot of vacation rental hosts that I talk to, they're fully booked through the summer. But I'll be the first to tell you, that exploring building out your paid ad strategy now will help you during those lower seasons, or when the travel bounce back slows down. So today we're going to learn from Conrad the sort of ins and outs of paid ads, and just to get a perspective on everyone's usage of paid ads, we have some poll questions in the chat box. If you can answer those questions quickly while we get started here, that would really help us situate our thinking and our discussion today, just so we know whether to be a bit more beginner on the beginner side or more advanced side. So please check those out. Ask questions in the chat. We'll get to them during the presentation, throughout the presentation, and at the end of it. Please also check out Build Up Bookings. Their website has a ton of great content for vacation rental professionals. And in fact, in preparation for this, I was doing some Google searches on paid ads in the vacation rental space, and the top 2 articles were from Build Up Bookings. So please check out their website. Conrad's the expert, as you'll see today, and please answer those poll questions when you have a chance. So let's kick things off. Conrad, welcome. And actually, we already have one question from a listener, and this will actually be a good way to kick off. Sorry to throw this at you randomly, but my calendar is fully booked. Why should I use paid ads? What do you say to that?
Yeah, well, we're in an interesting time right now, aren't we? Where even a lot of clients that we've worked with for many years who have significant budgets, 5-figure monthly budgets for Google Ads, for example, are considering turning them off or slowing them down. So here's why you should, and here's why you shouldn't. And it depends on your unique property, your case, what you're kind of focusing on right now. You should, if your booking window is still a little bit longer past where you're currently booked. So what I mean by that is if people are going on your site right now and searching for dates in September and you're not booked in September, then you should consider leaving that ad on, because you're obviously driving future bookings, people that might come in, stay 90 days from now, 120 days from now, that sort of thing. Now, to be honest with you, when I look at the data that a lot of our property management clients have around that topic, or around that figure, I'm not seeing that to be the case in many situations. I'm seeing a lot of people where they're searching more within a, let's say, 21 to 31, kind of day arrival time. So they're searching right now for stays in, June and July. As we record this, it's the tail end of May of 2021, obviously, and that's what we're seeing. So you shouldn't run ads for the most part if you are only seeing people looking for the short term and you're completely booked in. Whether you have one property, 10, 100, it might make sense to potentially, as we sit here today right now, lower your budget or turn things off completely. Again, some of our clients have done that with ads that they've just seen, so much demand, for this upcoming 16-week period, here in the US, and I'm sure even in Canada, other markets where all the summer weeks are booked. So that's when you should, that's when you shouldn't. If you don't know how to kind of get some of that information, I would say it's worth, maybe it's a separate topic or a separate discussion, it's worth kind of trying to figure out how to obtain some of that information. With some of our clients, we go into Google Analytics and we look at what the search dates are that people are entering. So we can tell, as we stand here this week, again, the tail end of May of 2021, we can go look and see, are they searching for dates that are happening, or check-in dates, checkout dates, et cetera, that are happening later in the year. So I think that is a good place to start, because obviously this is an interesting time right now where people are probably fairly booked and doing pretty well. But also, I'm going to talk about this kind of in the sense of how we've been running ads for many years and how I suspect we're going to have to continue to run ads going forward, because if it's great right now, it might not stay that way forever. And honestly, this is just a good tool to have in your tool belt as far as marketing goes, for your vacation rental properties, so that you have additional exposure when you need it. And a lot of things might change in the future, so we'll do our best to tie it back to what's happening right now. But in this particular question, kind of getting us started here, maybe this isn't something you do today or tomorrow. It's something that you learn about so that you have it again in your tool belt going forward.
Yes, absolutely. And just for your info, 50% of the people listening haven't spent anything on paid ads.
Okay, gotcha. That's good to know. Yeah. So as we were preparing for this presentation today, we had the chance to kind of sit down and talk about like what level should we go at. Obviously we could go a lot of different levels. We've worked with hosts that have just a single property. We've worked with property management companies that have 500,000 properties, and obviously those have very different focuses, budgets, et cetera. So today, really appreciate people filling out the poll, because it does let me drive my advice and drive my feedback towards maybe that person that hasn't done it before, and also try to give some tips along the way for people that have done it and want to improve what they're already doing or figure out a way to run a paid campaign more effectively. So we'll try to cover both bases to the best of my ability.
Cool. Let's get started.
Yeah, let's do it. Awesome. Thank you, Brad. Yeah, so title here, running effective paid ads, because I think that's what it's all about, right? So as we kind of talk about what we're going to focus on today, we're going to talk a lot about Facebook ads and Google ads. Those are the two that we see the best return from, the best results from, that sort of thing. But it's very easy just to go into these platforms and spend money. I think Facebook in particular honestly excels at it. It's straightforward enough that you can go in there, you can, let's say you could use the boost post functionality, you can run an ads and ads manager and just show your page or show a post on your page to travelers, right? Or potential travelers. That's very easy. But I think effective, is a good word, because that has a specific meaning. Effective doesn't necessarily just mean bookings, although I think that's our primary focus. And I would suspect that's the primary focus of a lot of people on the call. I want to put money in today and get bookings up tomorrow. That's obviously the goal. But effective could be different, right? You could use paid ads to collect email addresses so that you could have those for marketing. Again, further down the road, maybe you don't need them right now. You could use paid ads to grow just your page awareness, so that when you put out organic content on your Facebook page, you get more visibility from that. You could use paid ads in YouTube through the Google Ads platform, but you could run them through YouTube so that people who visited your website see a video tour of your property. Again, that may not drive a booking right away, but it's a great awareness thing. So again, we're going to talk about different topics today, mostly centered around Facebook ads and Google search ads, but we'll touch on other things that all kind of are part of, in my opinion, an effective strategy that aren't just put $1 in today and get $1 out tomorrow. Sometimes there's some other techniques or tactics or strategies that you might want to implement that are a little bit more, longer thinking and not just something that's going to work right away.
And just to jump in there, Conrad,
yeah.
That's such an important point around effective paid ads, because I've talked to a lot of people who have said, well, I tried paid ads and it didn't work for me. And you take a look at the ads and it's like, well, I know why it didn't work for you, because it wasn't effective. The copy wasn't right, or the graphics weren't great, or the target audience wasn't great. You really have to hit on those three things. And just before you get going, we have, for people who do pay for paid ads, we have 57 who use Facebook. And only 14 who use Google at the moment.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and I think kind of speaks to what I was saying a moment ago about Facebook makes it very easy. Like, kudos to their team and their business that they're running, right? Because there's this sort of allure, I think, that a lot of our clients have towards that boost post button. The idea that you put out a post on your page. I would assume a lot of folks here do have a Facebook page for their property, whether it's one, 10, 100, 1,000, whatever the case may be. And it's like, oh, just click this button and more people will see it. That's an appealing thing to have set up. Pops open, saves your credit card information, all this kind of stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that even people who haven't spent a lot have done a little bit on Facebook, because I think it's easy there. But I would argue, and we're going to get into this definitely more down the road, but I don't mind saying it twice, because I think it's a critical kind of thing to understand. In this third section here, there's a tile here that says search and social ads. Like, what's different? The right message in the right channel is my kind of subheading there. But what that means is that you have to think about the context in which a user is on Facebook, a potential guest, let's call them. A potential guest is on Facebook, scrolling the feed, scrolling the feed, scrolling the feed. They're kind of not really there for you. Let's be honest. You may have a phenomenal property. It might be the best property in your destination. That's fantastic. Congratulations. Good for you. But they didn't really necessarily go on Facebook to see that property necessarily, especially if it's a paid ad and they haven't liked your page, or they haven't engaged with you, they haven't stayed with you, you're kind of, to be honest, interrupting what they're doing. That's kind of what a lot of Facebook can be. You're interrupting what they're doing, trying to pull them off of Facebook and get them to go over to your website potentially, which is, again, it's effective, it can work, but you have to, like you mentioned a moment ago, I think you nailed it, Brad, you have to have the right creative. If there's not a good reason for someone to stop scrolling, then they're just going to continue to look at funny videos and cat memes and pictures of their friends and their family. And you have to kind of do something that's going to stop them from scrolling or stop them from looking on their phone and go over to your website. But let's come back for a moment out of Facebook and let's go to Google. Well, Google, you go to Google to specifically look for something, right? You go into Google and you put in, cabins for rent in destination name, or vacation rental in destination name. And although that means it's going to be more expensive to get that person to go to your website, meaning from a cost perspective, cost per click or cost per action or something like that, they also are kind of explicitly telling you what they want, right? That potential guest is going into Google and explicitly stating, I want to stay in a vacation rental, or I'm looking for vacation rentals in this market, in this destination. We'll talk to you about long tail keywords and that kind of stuff that might get you a more specific type of visitor or potential guest to that page. But yeah, I think that's a good thing to start with too here, is talking about, like, think a little bit on the higher level. Like, we're going to get a little tactical here on how to run some of these campaigns, the exact type of campaign I might suggest that you explore or run. But if your ad hasn't been effective, like, let's go back for a second. Almost don't think from your point of view as the vacation rental host or owner or manager. Think of the guest point of view. Like, why would someone stop scrolling on Facebook and go to your page and see your ad? Well, like, what's the reason why they would do that? On Google, as they see your copy, your copy might be alongside booking.com. It might be alongside Vrbo. It might be alongside Airbnb. It might be alongside the biggest manager in your market. It could be in a national, there could be national companies bidding on those same keywords, Picasa and so on. So again, what would someone want to see that would make them click on your ad, as opposed to one of those bigger companies that surely have a higher budget and could potentially acquire, guests at a lower rate, but they also need to acquire a lot more. So there's still a spot for you there if you play your cards right, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But I do think you have to have a solid strategy, and you have to think just one layer outside of yourself and put yourself more in the shoes of the potential guests seeing this ad than just, well, I have availability, why wouldn't they want to book my rental? So if you think on that level, I think you're going to have more success with it, in my opinion. So different pieces that we're going to go over today, just going through this really quickly. We're going to talk about targeting the right guest. Obviously, if that person that you're showing the ad to is not interested in your destination, not interested in your rental, isn't a good fit for you, then no, you shouldn't show your ad to that person, no matter what channel it's in. And that's just a waste of money. And Facebook and Google have plenty of money. They certainly don't need any more money that you've earned to make their ads platform effective. They know that they're doing a good job of that on their own. We're going to talk again about platforms. Should you target through Facebook, Google? Joke in there about carrier pigeons, not funny, but I thought it was funny when I wrote it. What's the right platform to actually reach out and send an ad to a potential guest on? We're going to talk about that. We kind of went over this already, but search and social ads, what's the difference? Like, what's different between, number one, how you can target folks on these two different platforms? Because there's massive advantages to social, where you can target based more on interest and demographic data. That's very difficult, and some would argue impossible to do on search. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, most importantly, the creative, the messaging, how to ads how should they look? What information should they have so that that person does, click through, that person does go to your landing page, that person does, explore further and hopefully get a booking from that. And then finally, Q&A. Love the questions that you guys send in as we did this webinar last time, and would like to answer as many questions as we can. So I've left a block of time there for Q&A. Okay, just brief introduction about myself, Conrad O'Connell. I own an agency called Build Up Bookings. We specialize in search, social, and email marketing. And we've worked with more than 65 different vacation rental companies over the past, 6 years at this point. So we've seen it all, I think, in a lot of different sizes, a lot of different budgets, a lot of different destinations. So I think that leads us to a wide enough, sample size that we've seen what's worked and what's not worked. So setting the stage. So most vacational business owners have run ads. That was my assumption, but most don't work. So why do I think that is? I think it comes down to usually some combination of the following three things not being correct. And I don't think you need to be perfect in all these areas. I think perfection is not necessarily possible with the type of ways that we target ads. There's no such thing really as perfect. But if you don't really know who you're targeting, if you don't really know what the actual offer is that you're sending to that person, and you don't really know how to target them, I think that's when we start to see, disjointed success or things not going in the right direction. So I'll say it again, if you don't know who you're targeting, if you don't really know and really understand your guest, demographics, where they're coming from, maybe their age, if they're traveling with children, or all those different things, I think that you can struggle. If you don't really know what your offer is, so again, if you just have a nice photo of your property as the creative, that may not be again effective enough for them to stop and actually engage with the content. If you don't really know what you want them to do next, I think that can sometimes cause an ad to not work well. So again, whether it's on Facebook, Google, whatever the case may be, if your ad is just a nice picture and some somewhat interesting copy about your property, and there's no button on the ad to actually get them to click on your website, or there's no chance for them to fill out a form, or there's no chance for them to chat with you, there's really no action that they can take. It's really just an ad that people are seeing. It's just kind of getting inserted into their feed, and there's not really clear what the next step is. So I think knowing what that next step is, who you're actually targeting with that ad, like just starting to crystallize some of these ideas in your mind, is what you need to do initially to kind of, again, set the stage here before you can get into the next stage of actually creating the ad. I don't think you should just create the ad without first thinking about those different elements, those different components, because then your ad is going to be a lot more effective when you have some of these, I don't even want to say strategy, almost just like a basic understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, what you're hoping to accomplish with that ad. So, number one, going back to our comment from earlier, who is the ad showing to? Was the targeting right? So targeting inside of these different platforms, let's start with Facebook, and then we'll go to Google in a second. Targeting on these platforms, they make it seem like it's kind of easy. I would argue that doing it well sometimes can be a little difficult if you don't know exactly what your target is. But we actually find the best way to get the targeting right is two things. One is kind of qualitative, like information, like we might interview our client and ask them information about, well, who stays in this type of property? Who's kind of the person that you see booking? Tell me a little bit about them. Where do they come from? That kind of stuff. We like to think about that a little bit. If you're a host or manager, you probably know that information better than anyone, especially an external company that may not have worked in your destination before. So this, I think, if you think about it, is easier to start with. So if you had a cabin in Ontario, you might know that a lot of people are coming from Toronto to visit that cabin, right? So you start to, form a little bit of a picture. Maybe it's a couple. Maybe they typically are 35 to 55 years old. You're starting to kind of create some basic, demographic information here, honestly. But you're starting to think a little bit about, is the targeting right? Am I showing it to the right person? Again, by default, some of these platforms like Facebook, if you don't do any adjustments to it, they're just going to show your ad to everyone in the United States, for example. If you're running an ad from the US. So we have clients where 90% of their guests come from 2 or 3 different drive-to markets. I'm based in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Many of the guests that I work with a local property management company here. Many of our guests come from, a 1-hour radius of Charlotte and Raleigh of North Carolina. So, it's a 3-4 hour drive from here. So we could run an ad only targeting those 2 geos, those 2 small areas, and probably see pretty favorable results just targeting those 2 places. Now we get lots of guests from other places, Ohio and different parts of North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, etc. But my point is, if you know where the majority of where your guests are coming from, you can kind of automatically start to narrow things down tremendously. And instead of targeting 220 million Facebook users, which is as untargeted as you might get, you can start to narrow things down a little bit more, and your ad is going to be more effective. So we'll talk about this in a few minutes when we talk about creative, but your ad is always going to be more effective when you're showing it to the right people and only the right people. What I mean by that is you're not showing it to some of the right people, and then you have some people that aren't interested mixed into that. All these platforms, Google and Facebook, they make money when the ad quality is better. So if your ad is a low quality ad, if they're starting to show that ad to people, whether it's a Google search campaign or whether it's on Facebook, and no one's really engaging with it, Facebook doesn't want to show that ad anymore. Even if you're willing to give them money, they're not going to want to keep showing an ad that no one is engaging with. They'd rather show an ad that people are engaging with, because number one, it's more effective for the advertiser. And advertisers are going to continue to come back and spend money with these platforms, obviously. And Facebook and Google, even though their primary kind of revenue model is through advertising, they know that users don't necessarily love the advertisements in many cases. So if you as a user start to see ads, or a potential guest in this scenario, if you start to see ads that are very untargeted, if I keep seeing rentals in places that I'm never going to go to, I may just kind of start to tune them out and not ever click on any ads going forward. So targeting, yes, it benefits you, obviously, the person running the ad. You want the targeting to be right so that you get the right person, in the door, if you will. But obviously the platforms want that targeting to be right as well. If it's too broad, they know it's not going to perform as well. So targeting on Facebook, talk about location. talk about demographics. You can target based on age. You can target based on some interests. Now, unfortunately, Facebook has taken a lot of this interest targeting away from us that used to work very well. In the webinar copy that we sent earlier, Brad, and we talked about, don't just use the vacation rental interest targeting, because you can do that. You could just say, someone who's 25 to 35 years old lives in this area and likes vacation rentals. But we found that that actually doesn't always necessarily tie back to their interest in staying. There may be other things that are available to them that they're not as interested in actually booking right now. So there's a tool and option now where you can target what they call likely travelers. That's a targeting option that might make more sense. Again, if you're just targeting solely based off a geography where someone actually lives, and where they kind of hopefully they want a vacation in your destination. And again, maybe some basic age information, some basic gender information. You can target based on male, female, and so on. Those are things that are worth exploring as well. But that's
sorry, yeah. Conrad. Do you know what they use to identify the likely travelers?
Yeah, everything in Facebook from a targeting perspective is always a black box for the most part, right? Like they don't necessarily tell you how these interests are generated, but here's the way that, the most logical kind of path that I think is out there. And we'll talk about the pixel in a second, which is that Facebook has two things kind of going for them to collect all this data on you. Number one, a lot of users are logged into Facebook, right? And they're using their browser to go and look for content. A lot of those sites, like let's say you were to visit a big site like Airbnb or Vrbo, right? As you're going through and looking at that, most of those sites have what's called the Facebook pixel or a tracking code installed on that site. So it's fairly easily, if we have a database of users over in this column, and we have a database of what websites they visit over in this column, it's relatively easy to match up. Okay, Brad here went to Airbnb.com recently, so I'm going to go ahead and tag him as potentially interested in traveling. Now, of course, you could catch a few, bycatch in terms of targeting. Like I see ads all the time on YouTube for Vrbo. Like I've seen 1 million of them in the past 12 months. And in many cases, it's just because I'm on there all the time doing client research. But yeah, a lot of that is just based on how people are visiting websites, maybe what content you're clicking on, what content you're engaging with. And Facebook kind of knows what websites you're visiting because of this vast network, this vast array of pixels or retargeting kind of codes that they have installed out there on massive websites. So that's where I think they're getting a lot of that data and a lot of that information from. Yeah. And we can talk in a minute. We'll talk in a minute about how you can target based on that data. Even if you are small, even if you just have one property, you can install that same pixel, that same retargeting pixel on your website if you have one, and then send people back to your website through that. So that's an effective path there. So to I guess button up the targeting side, qualitative, like that's where you kind of start to form an idea of what might convert best based on your insight, knowledge, and information about your rental. The flip side of that, if you want to take it a little bit further and you're maybe a small property manager or you have some of this data already, is you can look in something like Google Analytics and it will tell you all this information. For example, the location, it'll tell you which visitors coming from certain areas are the most engaged. If you have all of your conversion tracking hooked up in the right way, you can even see where most of your bookings are coming from. Obviously, you could just mine your own PMS Hostfully data, for example, to look at their home address, see where they're coming from. That's all useful context as well to go and target off of. So if you combine those two things, I think you can start to create a pretty simple plan specifically on Facebook for making a saved audience of people that are potentially interested in your rental or rentals. There's a simple way in Facebook to build an audience set just solely based on some of this targeting information. And you're starting to, again, think a little bit more about who you're showing that ad to. And I think you are automatically coming at this with a better frame to make the ad more successful. So was the targeting right? Once you have the targeting right, you can start to do a little bit better. I would argue that the perfect ad shown to the wrong person won't convert. It could be an awesome ad. You could spend a lot of time, paying a professional photographer to come in and take beautiful photos of your rentals. You could shoot a video. We've had clients that have had videographers come to some of their best rentals and shoot these awesome walkthrough videos of them, and they look phenomenal. And they won't convert at all if you show them to the wrong person, right? But in my view, a just okay ad, shown to the right person that's actually interested in coming to your destination, that's within driving distance, or maybe they're planning to travel to your destination soon as we head into summer here. Maybe they are coming in the fall, can convert. So the creative obviously matters a great deal, but I think that if your targeting is off, everything from that step forward is not going to succeed. If your targeting is off, it doesn't really matter what the ad looks like. If your targeting is good, then you get a little more leeway, a little more chance for success as you go down the next few steps of targeting. We're going to talk about budgets. We're going to talk about the ad creative and so on. So in my mind, it really starts with targeting, knowing who your guest is, knowing where they're coming from. That's the kind of ingredients on the Facebook side of things that you have to start with to see success. Now, on the Google side, what's interesting to me on the targeting is that the targeting is almost, in a way, done for you. What I mean by that is if a guest goes into Google and searches for the name of your destination plus vacation rentals, well, it's fair to assume that someone searching for San Diego vacation rentals is interested in looking at San Diego vacation rentals. Maybe they happen to be in one of your core markets, maybe not, but targeting on Google, in my mind, because of the keyword being such a specific, intent behind that keyword, is automatically, I think, a little bit easier. You have a much higher confidence that you're reaching the right person if you're bidding on San Diego vacation rentals and you happen to have a number of vacation rentals in San Diego, right? You feel like you're already kind of closer to what you're trying to accomplish and what you're hoping to get to just by simply the keyword itself. Now, trying to keep things to like the most effective channels, we don't necessarily have like enough time to dig into all the stuff around display, YouTube. I know we touched on that very briefly earlier, but if we just looked at those two things as the keyword is the best way to target in Google search because people are telling you exactly what they're looking for. In Facebook, either the information that you know about them, like uploading your email list or people that have been on your website, or the demographic information that you know about your guests, that can be a good place to start there. So again, the right person is critical. Having that information is key. So if you were going to do your first campaign, and this is going back, I think, to Brad, could you remind me real quick, what was the poll data earlier? A number of people who have not run an ad before, or what was the breakdown there?
It's 50%.
Okay. So for the 50% of people that have not run an ad before, I would kind of make the case that the most logical, like first campaign, highest leverage campaign to focus on is actually fairly simple, which is branded traffic. So if you think about your property or your properties as their own little mini brand, maybe you have the property itself is named. Some of our clients have that where the property is named, or maybe you have a management company, or you have each property named plus your management company. All these branded terms, first of all, we want them to be unique, right? We wouldn't want to just call our property, Sea Beach Villa, because there's a million other Sea Beach villas in the world. But if we have a unique name for a property, people or potential guests searching for that keyword in Google are potentially the highest leverage people to target with an ad. Because number one, our data tells us when we do this campaign, typically, that even people who are searching for the exact name of your company or the exact name of a property on your program, and let's assume in this scenario that that property doesn't exist in any other program, meaning you're the only one that has that name and people are searching specifically for that property when they search it on Google, that around half the time they actually click to your website. So that other half of the clicks might go to Airbnb, might go to a listing site, etc., which isn't a negative thing if they end up booking. But in a direct booking scenario, obviously someone searching for the name of your property, you prefer they go to your rental as opposed to going to a listing site when you could prevent it. It's also very common, some of the big guys out there, the big listing sites out there will bid on the name of your property as well. So they have ways to do this in kind of a somewhat of an automated fashion with dynamic ads, or they may have some kind of feed where they're generating ads from. And someone may search for the name of your property management company, or may search for the name of one of the properties that you own or manage, and they actually end up on the listing sites instead of your site. So sometimes you have to run a branded paid search ad defensively to make sure that your website is showing there, you're getting that traffic, and it's not going to one of your competitors. In another market we're in, our competitors actually bid on that as well. So not just the big listing sites are bidding on our brand name in one market that I'm in, but our competitors are extremely aggressive on bidding on that branded name in paid search as well. So if they search for the name of this company, and 2 or 3 of the main competing property managers in that market are also running search ads as well against that main keyword. So the reason that I think it's worth starting here is, number one, you're probably going to have an extremely high click-through rate. So click-through rate is just simply how many people saw your ad and chose to visit your website, click on your ad through Google search. So in this campaign, you may have a 40%, 35% click-through rate. If your brand was searched 100 times, 35 of those people clicked on your ad and visited your website. So that's positive, because you start your campaign or your ad account off with a campaign that's probably going to cost you a very low amount per click, 30 cents, 35 cents per click, and you're going to have a very high click-through rate. So naturally, your return on investment here is typically very positive. And again, I know some folks might be thinking, well, why would I run that branded campaign? They're just going to visit my website anyways. Again, the data we have that we look at in Search Console tells us that half the time that's not the case. They actually don't end up visiting your website, even when they search for the specific name of your company or the name of your brand. So by having both organic there and paid ads, the paid ad there, you increase your click-through rate, you increase your chances for success dramatically, and again, at typically a very low cost. So if you start with this campaign, just running branded paid search campaigns, even if you just have a single property, I think you'll see a good return on your investment, because one booking will probably pay for months and months of ad spend. So I think it's a great place to start for that reason. Company name and branded names. Again, I kind of put them together because depending on how you have it structured, your company name may be just your property name, or you may have a number there, a number of properties under management.
Just to jump in there, Conrad, we had a question when you mentioned ad spend, so I figured I'd ask the question now. What's a typical budget for, is it by property? Is it depend on the channel? Does it depend on your goals? And I know the answer is probably yes to a lot of those, but short answer, what's a good budget range per property?
Yeah, per property. So I think there's two variables that can help narrow it down tremendously. Number one, how many people are actually searching that on Google? So we just had a client that we're working with launch a brand new property, and we came up with a new name for this property. So the answer right now is the budget is like almost nothing because no one's searching for it. So our ad isn't even showing. We're not getting any traction on it. In the examples I was talking about earlier, we have some properties for clients that we work with that get literally hundreds of searches every single month. So hundreds of people a month are searching for the name of that property. And our cost per click, again, is around 35 cents, 45 cents per click. So in this scenario, let's say you had 200 people searching. We got 30% of people to click through. I'm doing this math on my calculator. I can't do this in my head, no worries. So that would be 70 people, 35 cents. So you might want to only spend $35, $50 per month on that campaign. In an example where a few hundred people per month are searching. So you don't need a big budget here. I mean, you can sometimes take this pretty far with $100 in my experience. You don't need a large budget on a monthly basis. Now, if you're a property manager on the call and your company name is searched much more than a few $100s or a few hundred times per month, then your budget may drastically change. We work with some companies where their branded search volume, meaning the number of people per month searching just for the name of their vacation rental company, their management company, exceeds thousands, tens of thousands of searches every month. So that's a bit of a different scenario. You're almost having to budget a few $100s or a few $1,000s on a monthly basis to accommodate that. But again, their ROI is still very strong. They're putting in $1,000 and getting back 20,000, 30,000 per month in terms of direct bookings just from that single campaign. So it scales, obviously. You have more budget. Sometimes your numbers end up being higher, but your ROI should be positive, whether you're spending $50, $100, and you have a single property, or you have thousands or hundreds of properties and you're spending thousands per month. It should still be a strong return on your investment either way, in my view.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Conrad, but to figure out how much branded search traffic you're getting, you can use Google Search Console or Ahrefs or another SEO tool like that. But I think Google Search Console is free, and you can see, are people searching for my branded company?
Yeah, exactly. I like the idea of using Search Console because it's as close to first party data as you're going to get. It's not flawless, but it's as good as you're going to get, and it's free. So the only caveat I would throw in there, one caveat, is that in this scenario, using Search Console to get that information, we're assuming that you have a website set up, that website consistently ranks in the top, few search results in Google organically, not paid, but organically, and you have access to Search Console. So you verified it and you've done all the right setups there. So that's my only handful of caveats to throw in there, but yes, that's a great place to check. Also, paid keyword research tools, Ahrefs is a good one. We use a tool called Keywords Everywhere that has a very inexpensive credit system. You're paying like a penny for dozens of credits to do searches on. So that's another option that's a lot more affordable for someone if you want to know what the volume is. And if you don't know what the volume is, again, just running a branded paid search campaign in Google Ads with a small budget, $50, will probably tell you pretty quickly, are people searching for the name of my rental? We've done this in the past, by the way, and found that there's two rentals with the same name, which may bring up a question about how you should brand and position your property or properties. If there's two properties called Sea Beach Villa in different markets, you may want to consider adding a geo modifier on there, Sea Beach Villa, Myrtle Beach or something like that, or you may want to consider restricting things geographically. So you're only showing your ads to people that are likely to travel in your destination. We've had some cases where we've run these campaigns and realized there was just too much brand confusion. We were actually getting phone calls for people that had booked the other company or the other rental. And we've actually done a rebranding based on running a branded, say, paid search campaign, because it uncovered a pretty severe brand identity issue that we weren't really aware was there until we started running the campaign. So sometimes this opens your eyes more than just your within the context of running ads, but good campaign to run, and you'll get, again, hopefully a strong ROI on it. One other sidebar here, I didn't put it in the slide notes here, is that whenever you have your property on listing sites, we find that automatically increases branded paid search volume. Because especially if that brand name is prominent in the listing sites, like Airbnb, for example, guests, sometimes want to look for you directly. I'm not saying that there's listing sites out there that charge a lot of fees, and some travelers are maybe a little savvy to that and know what's going on there. And look, like listing sites give you guys a ton of bookings. Definitely very rarely do I ever suggest pulling off of listing sites. But if a guest is intentionally coming off a listing site and searching for you directly, be there. Be there with this branded search campaign. You're going to spend very little and you're going to get a lot of bookings out of it in my experience. So low cost per click, again, expect in Google search 25 cents, 35 cents, 45 cents. High click-through rate, 20%, 30%, and hopefully a high conversion value of people that come through and actually perform that booking. So next up, we're going to kind of switch gears a touch here, and we're talking about targeting those who are most likely to book. So let's instead take it out of search and maybe go back to the Facebook side of things for a moment and think about people who are most likely to book. So targeting people who fit the following criteria. Number one, they've been on your website recently. So if you have your own website and it's built out and you're getting some traffic to it, again, some of it may be that branded traffic we just talked about a few minutes ago, or you have people coming to your website just directly. They've stayed in your property before, they've heard about it, they got a link to your friend. You're doing email marketing, going back to our last webinar that we did together. However people are coming to your website, you can retarget them or show ads to them just simply based on the fact that they visited your website. Again, once we talked about this earlier, but once you have the Facebook pixel tracking code set up on your website, you have all the ingredients you need to run an ad for people that have been on your website recently. I say recently because we found that some of the most effective campaigns are people who have been on your website in the last 7 to 14 days or less, obviously. If they were on your website yesterday, they're probably the highest in 10. But we find that if we go back too far, people that were on our site a month ago or 2 months ago, we find that tends to degrade the performance of those campaigns in most cases. So it's worth researching for your particular property. Maybe if you have people that are looking to book, going back to our conversation from the top, if people are looking to book right now for fall or for next year, maybe you want to expand that set of targeting. But if you're just looking to fill vacancies that might occur in the next few months, I would suggest targeting people that have been on your website in the last 14 days or so, 15 days or so, somewhere in that time frame. You can combine the following lists, though, with a guest list to make the audience size a little bit bigger. So what do I mean by guest list? So guest lists, very simply, people who've stayed in your property before can be phenomenal targets for Facebook ads as well. You can download from Hostfully. I think they support an export option where you could download the email addresses of these guests. Always suggest you get the real guests where possible. Actually, now Hostfully has a feature for that. A client of mine was showing me that the other day, where you can collect the email address in the welcome book. My understanding of that, Brad, correct me if I'm wrong. You can use that email address then as a marketing asset, a marketing tool. We talked in the last webinar about using that to send them emails. That's obvious, and that's a great thing that you should be doing. But the second piece of what you can do with that email is upload it to Facebook and then target them and show them ads based on the fact that they've stayed with you before. So if you have a market or a destination or a property, I should say, I guess, that has a high rebook rate, people that come back every year. Some of our clients this year are having people come back twice. They came in the spring and they're coming in the fall. We love it. That's phenomenal. That's not always the case though. But if that's the case, then you can target those guests on Facebook as well. And they're seeing your ads, they're seeing your messaging that we're going to talk about in a minute. And you can combine these people. So people that have been on your website and people that have stayed with you before, the quality can't get any better from those two types of targeting. And you can almost throw out the window everything I've said earlier about where they're located and what age they are and all that kind of stuff, because they went to your website or they stayed with you. We already know they're a good fit, right? They've already taken that step. So I think you can make your ad particularly effective when you put those two audiences together, or you can do separate ad sets if you prefer, because these are the hottest of the hot in terms of interest and potential guests. Again, you're going to get a higher click-through rate, you're going to get higher engagement, and unless you have a massive past guest list of thousands of people on that, you're not going to pay a lot. You might be able to run a campaign like this on $5 a day, $3 a day of ad budget and get very relevant impressions on an ongoing basis through Facebook ads. So definitely would recommend checking this out. I find that the people who have tried the ads and haven't been successful, they went way too broad, way too general initially, and they should have started with something more like this. They should have started with something like people who've been on their website, people who have stayed with them before, or even if you want to go one step beyond that, people who have at least been to your Facebook page before, people that have been to your Instagram page before. These are all targeting options that are inside of Facebook ads, and they can be significantly more effective than just someone who happens to live in a certain market that's never heard of you. That may be a tough, path to cross for someone to go from never heard of you to booking, but someone who fits into these other categories of past guests and website visitors is just much closer to the conversion. They've already gone through that awareness funnel. They're interested. It's just a matter of maybe right now finding dates that they want to travel that you actually have open. So we've talked a little bit about branded paid search. We've talked a little bit about the campaigns that you can run on website visitors and past guests, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go a little bit outside of those people who have heard of you, but hopefully those that have a high likelihood to convert. So we're going to talk a little bit about long tail messaging or long tail conversions. And the way that I like to say it is that happens when messages match. So what do I mean by messages? We're going kind of crossing back to Google here. When someone does a search on Google and you have the right combination of what keyword they're looking for or what query they're making, the ad, the landing page, and the property, if all these things line up, you can have a lot of success even targeting somewhat generic search terms. So going back to an example from earlier, let's say you had a property in San Diego and it's pet friendly. So if you were bidding on in Google, and it's oceanfront. Let's kind of really take this to the extreme here. So if you were bidding on a keyword like oceanfront, San Diego vacation rental property, pet friendly, or something highly specific like that, and your page mentions how you're pet friendly, your ad mentions how you're pet friendly, that you're oceanfront, and they come to that page and everything is right there for them as far as what they expect to see when they do that search. That ad is always, always, always going to have a much better conversion rate in my experience than just bidding on San Diego vacation rentals, right? So by layering in these kind of four components of what the keyword is that they're looking for, the ad copy that you show them, the page you send them to, and most critically, the property has to be right. If you get the first three right, but you don't actually have a property that meets their criteria, it's kind of a waste of time. But when all these things kind of line up the right way, you can have a lot of success, even with, again, somewhat generic searches like pet friendly San Diego vacation rentals or something like that. So be specific whenever you're running. Let's say this is your second campaign. Let's say we've kind of gone to that step there. Be specific, but I say make sure there's volume. With my example earlier, oceanfront San Diego vacation rental that's pet friendly, we might have gone one step too far. Whenever we add in too many modifiers, we might actually kind of end up chopping off the volume, and there's really not enough people searching that to justify running an ad on it. But if you can, if it's feasible to do so, use keywords everywhere or Ahrefs like we talked about a few minutes ago. Do that keyword research and try to find out where those things match up. What are people looking for? What does my property have? Can I make these things line up and match? And if so, all I need to do is write that ad, put some budget behind it, and you're typically going to have a high conversion rate with that traffic. So message, you want your message to match what the guest wants. When your message matches what the guest wants, if you have that all lined up, you can have a lot of success, even with moderate budgets, even with small budgets. So here's some quick tips that we didn't necessarily have a chance to get to in previous slides. Target the most relevant first, the least relevant last, or I put in parentheses here, or never. If you have one property and you're on this call, you have one property, you've never spent a dime, I would argue you should probably never run just a general targeting campaign on Facebook, targeting people in a certain geography. That can be useful maybe down the road once you get there, but start with the most relevant first. Don't start with the least relevant, which is unfortunately what I see a fair amount of, and then people don't have success with it. The more specifics of the search, the better opportunity for relevancy. Again, people are searching for a very specific thing on Google that your properties fit into. That's your opportunity for relevancy. It doesn't guarantee it, of course, but it gives you an opportunity to convert that person. You can improve without measurement. So we haven't really touched on this too much so far. We talked a little bit about the pixel and tracking. We haven't really talked about tracking the results of your campaign. But whenever you're running a campaign, whether it's on Facebook or Google or any platform that you're using, you need to know if it's actually working. Right? This is all kind of for naught if you're sending traffic there and you look at the report at the end of the month and you said, okay, I spent $200, I got 200 clicks, my ad was shown up 10,000 times. That's all well and good. How many phone calls did you get? How many lead forms did you get? How many newsletter signups did you get? Most importantly, did you get any bookings from that ad spend? If you can't track that information, then you're just always going to be kind of like this, throwing money in and not really sure how well it's working. So I would argue that's just as critical as all the other pieces that we've talked about so far today, which is tracking that the ads are working. Knowing that is what's going to be most important. So for the most part, you want to align budgets and track ad performance monthly. You can have a bad week. We had a week 2 weeks ago for an account that's been doing very well, where we had almost no conversions, and I'm sitting here scratching my head going, what's going on? A day later, we have a $18,000 booking come through on the same campaign. No copy change, no targeting change. We just, a week sometimes can be a small amount of sample size to come from to actually measure performance and measure how your ads are doing. So monthly is sometimes a good chance to overlook and see how it's doing. In my experience, if an ad has failed and fallen flat on its face for an entire month, then you might want to consider, moving on from it. But I tend to not do that just after a few days or a week or two worth of data. And then search. So we talked about this earlier, but I think it's worth repeating because it's one of my mantras here. Search is the action channel. Someone going out to Google and searching is they want to take action. Someone on Facebook scrolling, you're trying to stop them what they're doing and get them to do something else. Can it work? Absolutely. Is it the thing that's going to make them take action right away in that browsing session? Often no. So be careful with that and think about how your ad is targeting as you go through that process. So I have a check-in here because I think last time, Brad, we just kind of went on and on. So if there's any feedback on that, I know we have a little time left. I would like to do check-in on any questions that have come in. And then next up, I have some creative examples that I think people will appreciate looking at.
Yeah, sounds good. We do have a bunch of questions. We also, we're about 15 minutes left in the webinar, so we'll be quick. So the first one was on Facebook presence. This vacation rental manager doesn't have a Facebook presence. Would Facebook ads still be useful in that case?
Yeah, in some cases recently, we've had to make a Facebook page, brand new for a client, and they had nothing set up previously. And here's my take on it. I think that the trust can be a little bit, it's tough to build guest trust when you have no Facebook presence whatsoever. So if they're seeing an ad for, one of your premium vacation rental properties in whatever destination this person happens to be in, and they click through to your page and they see that it has no likes, no engagement, no nothing, that may kind of raise a red flag in their mind of like, is this a legitimate offer? Is this something that's actually, good fit for what I'm, consider giving them thousands of dollars for a vacation rental and so on. So I do think you want to have some base level of authority on your Facebook page itself. I'm not saying you need to spend an ungodly amount of money on it. Maybe, getting a few hundred likes, posting organically somewhat frequently, weekly or even bi-weekly could be okay as long as you're putting something out there, and having all of the information filled out on that Facebook page when you build it up. Phone number, website address, if you have an office address that you can share, things like that. You want to make that profile look as professional as possible, even if you're starting with a low amount of likes or a low amount of page engagement. You want to build some trust, and the guest clicks through. You don't want them to second guess, like, is this a legitimate page? Is this a legitimate company? Because unfortunately, some scammers will run scams through Facebook ads. So I would say that's what you have to do there. Does the page have to have thousands of likes for it to be effective on ads? No, because most people don't actually click through to the page. But for those who do, I would argue having those things would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Another one from the audience was about lookalike audiences. What are your thoughts on that? And collecting emails, and I mean, it's the importance of collecting emails. And if you don't know about that, then check out our previous webinar. But what are your thoughts on lookalike audiences?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of lookalikes. It didn't necessarily make the cut on what we're trying to do here. I think it's a little bit more of an advanced strategy, but it sounds like the person asking the question is aware of what they are. But for the benefit of those other folks on the call or listening to the recording, basically you could take what we were talking about a minute ago, an email list of your past guests, upload it to Facebook, and then Facebook will try to find similar users, similar people that fit that criteria or that category. And it can be a great way to prospect and find new guests that might be interested. So big fan. Yes, definitely test it and see how it converts. Absolutely.
Sounds good. And one more on A/B testing. What are your thoughts on A/B testing? Changing wording for one creative and trying out different things like that for the same campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we do a new ad set on Facebook, 3 is typically our rule. So we could argue it's kind of like ABC testing, I suppose. But yeah, A/B testing is critical to test different creatives. And I think you want to test different ad units or ad creatives on Facebook and on Google, different copy on Google that are drastically different. I don't think you want to change like one word and be like, hey, did the word book better, or did the word explore better or something like that. I think you want to do a completely different image. If you can do different formats, for example, doing a video versus a static image, having a photo of a kitchen versus an outdoor, like these are the things that we like to test. We don't like to test just one small thing. We like to try 2 totally different approaches to the copy, short versus long, different photos. We've done like slideshow style videos. If we don't actually have video creative, definitely have 2, ideally 3 creatives per ad set that you do on Facebook, because you will quickly learn that your favorite, speaking from personal experience, your favorite sometimes isn't the one that the guest cares about and the guest likes, and you may have a certain angle that you think is awesome, and then you're on the ad and you're like, the kitchen photo converts best. Why is that the case? But it happens to us all the time. We have ads that we love and then they fall flat in their faces, and ads that we're kind of like, okay, and then they do very well. So yes, always be testing your ad creatives for sure.
Okay. And the last one I have for now is on getting ideas for creative graphics and wording, and I think we're about to get into that. So I think it's a perfect segue.
There you go. That was flawless. Okay, so we have some examples here. These are Facebook retargeting examples for a company, First Flight Rentals and the Outer Banks. So you can kind of see what we're doing here, right? Short copy. We're kind of emphasizing the particular nature of what this property is. The pool, beach, and you is kind of what we've come up with here. This is like the fisherman's paradise. This property is right near the pier. Here's your view out the back deck, the copy on the ad, escape to the Outer Banks. On the bottom, you can see there, 2-bedroom property, amazing sunsets. On site, you can go stand up paddleboard, you can go kayak. It's got everything you need. So just these kind of short, punchy ads have done well for us before. On the bottom right, that button there, book now. That's the copy that we typically like to run there. Again, we'll test different things, but this is a good example of a retargeting campaign that can make a lot of sense. People who have visited this website will see an ad that looks a little bit like this. Yeah, so that's one example there. This is an example a little bit more vertical. So you can run different placements on Facebook and Instagram, obviously. One's kind of more of the square format for desktop. One's, rectangle format for desktop. One's a square format that works well on Instagram. This kind of long format works well on stories. So stories that run in the news feed, or like the stories feed on Instagram and Facebook. This is just a little bit longer copy. Offer the best vacation rental homes in St. Simons Island, Georgia. Tap below to start your search. So very basic, very simple call to action. It's kind of an iconic lighthouse photo there. Obviously, the name of the company too kind of ties in there to that. And people who have been to the island before know it, know that photo. So it kind of stops them what they're doing. We have the branded kind of logo there on the bottom, and this ad has done well for us in terms of engagement. Another example here, Summer in the Smokies was kind of a campaign concept that we had come up with, where we're talking about, a seasonal kind of push here. So looking to get, bookings for these next few months here. Summer in the Smokies, get away from it all and find the great outdoors. We kind of use this bullet point style copy. So you see the little stars and the 3 bullet point features there in the middle of the ad. This is again another concept that we think does well, because the bullet points are nice and easy to scan. As people see this ad, we think just kind of the solid nature of the graphic, the text kind of pops well here. Visually, I think it makes people stop and look. And another concept here that's strong on brand. Logo in the bottom left, logo in the header, gets people to click through and check it out. So that's another example there. Just gives some people some inspiration for their Facebook ads. And then I actually pulled some different Google search ads examples, and I wanted to point out a few things on them, just to kind of point out what you can kind of focus on, or what you can do with your own Google search ads. Obviously, it's not as visually creative, because with a search ad, you just have text to work with. But I thought I'd point out some things that I think they're doing well. So here, one of the nationals, Vacasa, is running an ad here in North Myrtle Beach, where I'm based. And I just wanted to point out the different kind of add-ons that you can put inside of an ad. So again, when I think of people on this call who are going to go through that Google Ads workflow to set up a campaign, by default, Google doesn't necessarily push you that hard to do some of these things, but in my opinion, they tend to increase the effectiveness of the campaign significantly. Number one, you can put a phone number on there. A lot of people now just want to click and call on their phone, on the mobile, there'll be a little button there. They could just tap and call your phone there. Great thing to have in place. Google will also track the number of phone calls that you get from this ad, so you can see the effectiveness of it. So as you're writing your copy, note that most of the time Google only shows headline 1 and headline 2, which is between this dash there in the middle of the screen. Headline 3 only shows up more on mobile. You can write 2 descriptions of 90 characters each. You can have these call out extensions at the bottom where it says easy book now option, professional management, attentive cleaning. And then you can have site links in the very bottom as well. Oceanfront vacation homes, use of the ways, rentals with pool access, etc. So there's a lot of different components to a Google ad. And yes, it can take a little time to set up an ad like this. It has all the right features and has all the right extensions that Google has in place. But when you take that effort, your ad looks more professional. You tend to have a higher click-through rate. And again, it goes back to what we said earlier. When your click-through rate improves, you actually have your ad perform better, even if you have a lower budget. So we find that to be the case. But yeah, phone numbers are very helpful. These are the site links I was talking about a moment ago, those blue links in the bottom. Those can go to a specific kind of deep link page on your website. So instead of just going to your homepage or to a property page, you could send them to your blog or things to do or activities or whatever other content that you built out on your website. Another example here, I just thought this one kind of had a unique feature on the address portion. So if you link your Google Ads account to Google My Business, you can actually pull in the address of your rental office if you're a property manager. If you're a host, you typically can't pull in you can't get it verified for your Google My Business listing for a single property. That's kind of technically against the Google's rules, but if you have it verified and you want to pull it in there, you can do that. One thing I think this does is it emphasizes local. So if you're a local property manager and you're in a market trying to emphasize that kind of fact, the big guys can't do this. Airbnb can't say, oh, we're at this drive, this address and this market, because they're not. You're the ones that are actually on the ground in many cases. So emphasize that if you can within the ad. Have your address there if that's something that does apply to you. And then just one more example, this is on mobile. If you have reviews, you can pull in reviews from a third-party source. I think the supported ones that we typically use the most right now is called Trustpilot. Trustpilot is one that we've used before. So if you're getting and collecting reviews from past guests and putting that into a system like that, you can kind of share a rating or a review, excuse me, that you've earned from that past guest. And I think it, again, brings trust and brings legitimacy to a brand when you don't have a lot to work with. On the creative side, it's just copy. So that's one thing that you can kind of put into there. Want to leave more time for questions here at the end. I think we ended with 4 minutes to spare, Brad. So I don't know if I did a great job there on leaving enough time. And if you want these slides, I think Brad's going to send them out, or you can, if you have any questions or anything, email me, just Conrad@buildupbookings.com. But happy for any other questions you have as well, Brad.
Yeah, no, that's great, Conrad. And yeah, well, this video will be available on demand, so folks can go back and reference it. And like I said at the beginning, please reach out to Conrad, check out the website, sign up for their newsletter. Great content. This was fantastic, Conrad. I had one more question come in. Actually, two. One was about social proof, but I think you sort of touched on that. And I like the idea of the Trustpilot. Usually, you think about that for just technology companies or physical product companies, but for the hospitality industry, that could be very useful too. Is there other social proof that you've seen work well in paid ads other than sort of like the star review, like quotes or something like that?
Yeah, we have actually just pulled text out of reviews. We'll sometimes like kind of anonymize it a little bit. So, we might say Brad C, just to kind of protect that person's name a little bit if they don't want it on one of our ads. I think that's a good way to do it. But yeah, we'll pull text out of ads. We've done ad creative with that as the creative, as the actual ad copy. We've also put it on the bottom of like the image I showed earlier, where it was like a view of the property or a view of the listing itself, the bottom, a 5-star review in the actual image itself, the best views. In the one client that I'm thinking of has properties in the Bahamas, unbelievable views of the ocean. So the review said something to the effect of, the absolute best views of the ocean in the Bahamas. And that was like in quotes, Brad C, and add something like that on the bottom. So yeah, I think that can be an effective part of your campaign there. We haven't taken it so far. We've had the idea. Would be interested to see if anyone else in the call is willing to take it this far, of having like a guest submit a video, of them like in the property, or of them, front-facing camera style, record it. Thanks so much to for hosting us. We love this property. It's awesome. We haven't done that yet, but I know like user-generated content style ads work very well in different verticals, like e-commerce. That works very well. Like people saying, hey, I love my iPhone. My iPhone's awesome. That type of creative can work very well in e-com. So I don't see why it wouldn't work here. I think it's just tough to get a guest to agree to, record themselves and get that video. But if anyone takes it that far, I would love to see how well it works.
Yeah, no, I've never even thought of that. That's a great idea. I'm going to try that next time with my next guest.
All right. You'll be our guinea pig. Yes.
Yeah. I'll let you know how it goes.
Awesome.
Well, thanks very much, Conrad, for joining us. And I don't suspect this will be the last time we're chatting with you. There's some other marketing, vacation rental marketing topics that we haven't covered yet still, like organic traffic and social media and that kind of stuff. So we'd love to have you back. And thanks everyone for joining and all the great questions. And we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much again, Brad. Appreciate it.
All right. See you around.
Thanks.